Hi, everybody. You're very welcome to today's welcome to the Big Book Study, where we will have two guest speakers. We will have Nancy J and Larry K. My name is Audrey Ann, and I'm a recovered compulsive overeater from County Meath in Ireland, and I will be your host today. We also have Maria F and Sue L and Dawn B as host. If you have any questions during the meeting, please contact myself or any of the other co-hosts through private message in the chat function. Please note that the speakers will be recorded for the duration of the study. However, the questions and answer sessions will not be recorded. We will post the link for the previous week's recording in the chat function. We ask if you please make sure to keep your microphone on mute at all times during today's speaker, and also please turn off your video if you are exercising or eating, or if you need to step away from your screen. I will now hand you over to the lovely Nancy J. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you. And Maria Ann Marie K needs to be a co-host because she's going to show some pictures.
Brilliant.
So Ann Marie K, if you see her.
What was the other name, Nancy?
Right here. I'm here. Anne Marie K.
Okay, got you there. So if you stay there, if you can just keep your microphone on there, we can do it from here. Okay, great. Was there another person, Nancy?
No, I think she's the only one that I personally who's going to help me. Now, Dawn B is going to do the question and answers when Larry is done. Then we'll have a question and answer period.
I'm still not made a co-host though to do that.
Oh,
Just so you know.
With us, yeah.
Okay, just checking. Thank you.
We're okay. And Maria, we're recording. I think we're all set.
All set, Nancy. Away you go.
We're all set. And today is Saturday, February 18th, 2023. And Harlan is visiting in the Chicago area, so he isn't here today. And so for people who just came on, I'm going to be speaking for about a half an hour about my recovery. Then Larry K is going to speak for half an hour on his recovery. And then we're going to ask for questions and answers. And then there'll be a parking lot after that. So we hope you can join us for all of that. Now I'm going to start in on my story. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life. I'm 77 years old right now. I was born May 24th, 1945, into a Jewish family in New York. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. And
I'm getting it.
And Anne Marie, there's a picture there that has nothing to do with me.
I know, I'm trying. That's your parent.
Okay. Ignore the picture in the background. This is a picture of my parents. Anne Marie is kind enough to help show some of my pictures. And you can see my parents were lovely people who maybe you saw them.
Sorry
You're
about
having
that.
some technical. Okay, here we go. Wonderful. Thank you, Anne Marie. My mother was just a lovely woman, beautiful woman. And her name was Jeanette. And my father, Herbert, was a great father. So I was very lucky, the family that I was born into. Both of their parents came from Europe, Jews from Europe, escaping the Russians. Their parents were from a part of Europe. It was little villages like in Fiddler on the Roof, those kind of villages. And so in both cases, their parents came to New York, and my parents met and married, and we moved out to Long Island, to Freeport, which is an hour outside of New York City. My father was a lawyer, and I'm a lawyer. And we just had a very happy home life. We had a wonderful family. Relatives would come and visit us. We'd sit in the backyard or sit in our house, and there was no praying or anything like that, but we belonged to a Jewish temple, but it was more of a cult, being a cultural Jew, feeling a part of the Jewish community, but we didn't actually pray. Nobody asked for God to intervene in their lives. And I was a very happy little girl, very outgoing and sociable. And but I myself was never heavy. And Anne Marie, can you show the picture? Would you be able to show the picture of me with my mother and my brother? Okay, there's my beautiful mother. You can see she has a tiny waist. She always had a beautiful figure. And my brother, and then that's me in my mother's arms. And you can see I was just a normal weight little girl. I was a normal weight teenager, and I never really thought about my weight or food. It was just a non-issue. And unfortunately, when I was 9 years old, my mother died of breast cancer. And it was back in 1954. And for some reason, there was some stigma or shame attached to cancer. And I don't think that exists as much today. There may be a little bit of that where people don't want to talk about having cancer, but I don't think there's an actual stigma or a shame anymore. But back in 1954, I think there might have been. And my mother, I'm sure, didn't want to scare me. I never had the opportunity to ask her because she on her own decided to hide the cancer. And she told me she had a back issue and went in and out of the hospital with a back issue. So I never worried. I just thought my mother had a bad back. And then finally one day, my father sent me to my aunt's house. And when I came home, everybody was crying. All kinds of relatives were crying. And I was told my mother had been buried that day. I wasn't even at the funeral. I didn't know that she was ill. And so that, of course, is traumatic. And one of the many things that I've had to work on in my OA resentment work is to understand that my mother loved me. She was a wonderful mother, and she would never have done anything to me to hurt me. And she probably thought she was protecting me. I've even realized lately she may not have even known how ill she was. She may not have known she was dying when she died. She may not have known it was going to be that soon. But my brother's bar mitzvah was in 1954. My mother willed herself to live for his bar mitzvah. We have beautiful pictures of my mother dancing with my father. And just a few weeks after that, she died. So she somehow she wanted to be alive for his bar mitzvah. But again, I had no idea that she was a sick woman in that way. And then my father remarried, and he remarried, and my stepmother was a very cruel and cold and difficult woman. I had tough teenage years living with this woman. And then she died of cancer. She had her foot amputated and her leg amputated and died when I was a senior in high school. So I had, of course, more trauma. And the greatest trauma may have come from how cruel and difficult my stepmother was. That may have been harder than anything. It affected my self-esteem very deeply. And so then I went on to college, and then all of a sudden after college, I started to worry about just a few pounds, and I went to Weight Watchers, and I enjoyed Weight Watchers. I love the camaraderie, and I loved listening to the speakers. But then I got married, and had children. And that's when I began. Here's a picture. Anne Marie is kind enough to put that up here. You'll see I wasn't that overweight as a bride. I may have thought I could lose 5 pounds, but the weight was still not a major issue. But then, and now, Anne Marie, I'd like you to show the composite picture, the before and after picture, to show you I got to be where my weight was over 100-pound issue. And I yo-yoed throughout my whole adult life, gaining, and the top row is me at 272 pounds. The bottom row is me today at 167. And you can see in the bottom row that Anne Marie is showing, there's my husband, Walter, who I've been married to for 54 years. And I've been very fortunate to be married to such a wonderful, loving man, a very good man, who accepted me no matter what my weight was. And he tells a little joke that being married to me was like being married to 10 different women, because I look so different at different times in our 54 years of marriage. I've been every size and shape. And I tried, and Anne Marie, you can take that one down. I tried very hard with different diets, and I'm a very good dieter. I'm an excellent dieter. If you give me a diet plan, I will follow it, and I will be very faithful to it, and I will lose the weight. I don't care what the plan is, I'll stick to it, whether it's Jenny Craig or OptiFast or Weight Watchers or anything you can think of. I'm very faithful to the plan. I've always been a good student and loved school, and I would study the diets and I'd follow them. But once I lost the weight and got down to my goal weight, what do you think happened? I bet every one of you would get 100% with that question. I put the weight back on. Something was wrong up in my brain, like Dr. Silkworth explains in The Doctor's Opinion. There's something up in my brain, as faithful a dieter as I am, and as good a student as I am, and as well-intentioned as I am, something up in my brain just doesn't accept it. And once I get down to my goal weight, little thoughts creep in like, Nancy, you've done so well. You could have an ice cream sandwich. It's a hot day. Or Nancy, you could have pistachio nuts. They're healthy. It won't hurt you. You can have a few. And before I knew it, my whole food plan fell apart. And I was talking myself into eating this and that. And then I'd say, well, get it out of your system and eat some more. You'll start tomorrow. And I did this again and again and again, putting the 100+ pounds back on. And meanwhile, I'm in law school, and the stress of being an attorney was pretty severe. I was basically a corporate lawyer in a male-dominated environment, and I worked very hard. I was one of those people that was there late at night and early in the morning. And I remember one day in particular, I felt tremendous stress, and I had in my desk drawer all kinds of candy bars and granola bars and snacks, and that's how I would get through the day. And so finally, in April of 2015, I came back to OA. I had started with OA many years before, but then I left it to go to law school. So now I'm back in April 2nd of 2015 at 272 pounds. And I am at this point in very serious condition. When I go to work, my nose starts to bleed and the bright red blood would fall on the papers on the desk. And there I am sitting in a black suit, 272 pounds, trying to look professional, and blood is dripping all over my papers on my desk. I'm too scared to go to the doctor. I have high blood pressure. I'm sure was a good candidate for a stroke, but I was too scared to go to the doctor. But then I finally went to OA. And I remembered sitting there that night on April 2nd, 2015, very depressed with a black raincoat, like a size 26 or 28 black raincoat. I never said a word in that meeting, but I heard these words at the end of the meeting: welcome home, welcome home. The tears just went down my cheeks. I was so emotional at hearing those words. And for any of you who are listening to me, let me say that to you with all my heart: welcome home. And so I joined OA again. I got a sponsor. We went through the steps. I was very faithful. I was a faithful student, as I always am, followed my diet beautifully, lost over 100 pounds. Do you think that I relapsed that time? And the answer is, thank God, no. That's the miracle that I'm telling you about today. I'm telling you that I have not relapsed since I came into OA April 2nd of 2015. It's been a miracle, because now when that voice in my head says, Nancy, go ahead, you can have an ice cream. My husband and I are sailboaters, and we go away for the weekends on our sailboat up in Wisconsin. We hang around with a lot of normal people as far as food is concerned, and they're all eating ice cream. We walk for a mile from our boat to an ice cream store, and everybody's getting ice cream. I'm the only one who isn't getting ice cream. And maybe some of these people are even a little heavier than me at this point. I might say that the voice may go off in my head: Nancy, you can have an ice cream. It's hot. You walk for a mile. And then this voice, the recovered voice, comes into my head and says, it's poison for you. You don't need that. Don't hurt yourself. It's poison for you. And you know what the miracle is? I listened to that voice. The voice that I never listened to before. I never had an answer before. If it told me to eat before, after I lost the 100 pounds, I would eat. Now I don't do it. Now I see it that for what it is, it's a killer. Certain foods for me are a killer. And I'm now, because of going through the steps, having a higher power and sponsoring people and going to meetings and listening to podcasts and hanging on every word in that big book, the sane voices in my head, now I'm able to listen to them. And I want to read to you a beautiful section of the big book. I think of this big book, for those of you who are anywhere near my age, you may remember there was a toy, a child's toy, years ago called a Crazy 8-Ball. Do any of you remember that? And you shake it and it gives you an answer. You ask, it's like almost like a fortune cookie in a Chinese restaurant. You ask the Crazy 8-Ball a question, like, should I go to the movies? And you shake that 8-ball and it'll give you answers. Well, that's how I look at the big book. This big book is so loaded with answers for every problem you might have in your life. It's a miracle book. And on page 275 is one of my personal favorites because of my age and my stage of life. I'm now a retired attorney and I'm 77. And I'm looking at the years that I have left. And by the way, and Anne Marie will show you a picture, I have 3 adult children, 7 grandchildren. My 3rd great grandchild is on the way. And I want to show you a picture of me in the British Virgin Islands with our entire family. We went on a big vacation when I was in recovery and I had lost the 100 pounds and I was keeping it off. And I felt so filled with joy. And you can see me there on the extreme left. And my husband, Walter, is in the blue shirt in the middle. And our two sons are there, and our daughter and our grandchildren, and there we are in the British Virgin Islands. And I felt tremendous joy that I was my normal weight, and that weight and compulsive eating wasn't an issue. It just simply wasn't an issue. And on this island, there wasn't very much of a variety of food. For those of you who know the British Virgin Islands, it was Jost van Dyke, and it's a very primitive kind of an island. But I was fine, even though I'm a vegetarian, and even though I have a lot of foods I don't eat, I avoid them. I was fine. Anne Marie, you can show that one too. That was me at the OA birthday party, where I went just, I think that was, let's see here, that was in January, I believe. Yes, the mid-January. There I am out in Los Angeles, OA birthday party. And again, I feel comfortable. I can focus on other people. I feel happy because this problem is just not a problem right now. Thank you, God. But getting back to page 275 in the book, this is a page that I think speaks very much to, and Anne Marie, you can just go back to people's norm. Oh, that's a cute one. That's me with Harlan, and I'm in White Plains, New York, and that was in January as well. There was a workshop, and Harlan gave the workshop, and I flew to White Plains, New York. I was just in the audience enjoying the workshop, and we were having a meal in the restaurant, and you can see my big book on the table, and Harlan's leaning on his big book, and you can see his big book is really filled with notes. You can see it's right under his arm there. So Anne Marie, I think we've gone through all the necessary pictures now. We're back to our regular Zoom. Thank you very much, Anne Marie. We just go back to people's regular pictures. We've, I think, seen enough of them. There we go. So on page 275, I'm going to read to you the middle paragraph. Some of you might be older, but even if you're younger, you might wonder, what is my life going to be like now that I'm in OA and I'm in recovery and I'm practicing the 10th step and the 11th step and I'm sponsoring? What is my life going to stand for? What's the purpose of my life? Well, the big book answers that question along with every other question you could possibly think of. Page 275, AA, or we could say OA, is not a plan for recovery that can be finished and done with. It is a way of life, and the challenge contained in its principles is great enough to keep any human being striving for as long as he or she lives. So that's what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. I'm going to be striving. I'm going to be striving because of the way of life and the challenge contained in our program. So we're never done. It says we cannot outgrow this plan. As arrested alcoholics or compulsive overeaters, we must have a program for living that allows for limitless expansion. Now, I have a few minutes left, and I'm going to use those few minutes to talk about the 10th step, because I feel that I've got about 5 minutes left. So I'm going to cover the 10th step. The 10th step is a simple step, and people very often ask me to speak about it. So I picked that for my last 5 minutes because hopefully it will help somebody. All you have to remember to do a 10th step is 4 words. 4 words: selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And if you look at page 84, there they are. Now, how are you going to remember those 4 words? I tried to think of a memory trick to remember them. And Anne Marie, do you see a little cottage in the pictures I sent you? you see the very last picture I sent you was a cottage. I sent it just as you joined the meeting. Well, I'll keep talking. If you can't find it, that's all right.
One with your mother?
No, no, no. Don't
I
worry about it. Honestly, don't worry about it. And I'm going to just talk about the cottage. It's a cute little cottage and it has a sod roof on it. And why do I talk about a cottage with a sod roof in connection with the 10th step? It's because sod roof for me is my memory trick in remembering selfishness and dishonesty. That's the sod. And the resentment and the fear is the roof. So I picture in my mind a little cottage and a sod roof. Why do I think it's important to remember those 4 words? Because the 10th step on page 84 tells us to remember, to continue to look for that. Well, how are you going to look for something that you can't even remember what it is? You've got to go around all day long looking for resentment, fear, selfishness, and dishonesty. So it's very important to remember those 4 words. So you can think of any little trick you want, but you need some way to remember it. And once you continue to look for those things, they're going to pop up all the time. And so then you just call somebody up, you tell them what the resentment, the fear, the selfishness, and the dishonesty is in very few words. Like Harlan says, like a headline, very few words. You ask your higher power to take them away and handle them. You make an amend if you've harmed anybody, and that's it. That whole process takes about 2 minutes. And the reason why it's important to do a quick 10th step is because we're supposed to do them throughout the day. And if you make it a big deal, you won't have any time left to live your life. If you made each time you were aware of resentment, fear, selfishness, or dishonesty, an hour-and-a-half phone call, you wouldn't be able to live your life. So you've got to be able to handle that in a very efficient way and leave it in the hands of God and then go on with your life. So I think I've exhausted my time. I want to thank you so much. I'm going to read, just as an ending, I'm going to read something that I wrote called Do It Anyway. It's something I wrote after I worked with a sponsee. And I was telling the sponsee this, and when I hung up the phone, I thought, I'm going to write it down. Maybe it'll help someone. So I'm going to read this to you as my ending. Don't believe in attending OA meetings? Do it anyway. Don't believe in using a sponsor? Do it anyway. Don't believe in reading the big book? Do it anyway. Don't believe in following a food plan? Do it anyway. Don't believe in seeking a higher power? Do it anyway. Don't believe in doing inventories? Do it anyway. Don't believe in making amends? Do it anyway. Don't believe in sponsoring others? Do it anyway. Don't believe you can recover from compulsive eating? Do it anyway and cherish the miracle. And with that, I pass. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nancy. And thanks for your experience, strength, and hope. And if anybody has just joined us, we have 2 guest speakers tonight, and that has been Nancy J, and we now have Larry K. So Larry, I'll hand it over to you. Thanks.
Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate that, Audrey. And thanks for everyone who's doing service and putting this on today. And I got to say, it's a real honor to speak with Nancy. Nancy's one of my dear friends. I don't get to see her nearly enough. Haven't seen her in a while, face to face. Nancy and I, Nancy, if I'm right, we originally met in a face-to-face meeting. And I want to say it might have been Wheaton or somewhere else. Is that right?
Yes.
We met, yeah. And I knew she had something. She was on to something. She was trying to figure it out. And I remember trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to figure it out. But anyways, maybe someday I'll figure it all out. But in any case, so I'm Larry Kay. I'm a recovered compulsive overeater. I live in the Chicago area, and I'm delighted to be here. And I had lunch with Harlan yesterday, and that was a real treat. Harlan, if you don't know, he's got strong opinions. He's got strong opinions about this program, and I do too. I've been influenced by my experience, but he always says bottom. You hear Harlan, bottom line, bottom line. Yeah, if you ever talk to Harlan, he's going to give you the bottom line, right? I don't know. I'm more of a gray area guy, but I'm going to share with you some of my, what it was like and what the heck happened to me and what it's like now. And one thing I'll tell you, it's not perfect. That I can tell you. It is not perfect, but I have a way of life that's pretty extraordinary today. So where I want to start is just, I don't have any pictures either. Nancy, I love the pictures. That was so, I think that, to have pictures like that really brings things to life. And I really enjoyed that. Now, it's for me, I don't have any pictures. So I'm going to try to paint a picture in your mind of some things here. First off, just from a physical standpoint, the heaviest that I can recall being, because I just want to give you some sense, because, people see me today or over the years, I'm different than I was physically, emotionally, spiritually, certainly, but I was the highest weight that I was approximately 100 pounds heavier than I am today. It was probably a little bit more than that, but I didn't grow up heavy because I had two older brothers. I have two older brothers. I have a younger sister, and my two older brothers were very athletic. So as a consequence, and there wasn't video games back in the day, right? It was safe. We were shooed out of the house with a basketball or a baseball or something, right? And we could be gone all day during the summer. And so I was very physically active. I didn't know that I was a compulsive overeater back then. I know it today, looking back. I was most certainly a binge eater. That was the most exciting thing. You could take I played baseball all through college and all that. You can take that and throw it out the window. If you want to put that up against a Snickers bar or some, Rocky Road ice cream or some pizza, it's going to lose it's going to lose for sure to those things. Those were the most exciting things in my life. Food was more than just love in my family. It was certainly that. I don't know if you can relate, if that resonates with you at all, but food was love. For an example, I had two loving parents that were, they were divorced when I was very young. I had a very volatile childhood. It's not because I wasn't loved. I was absolutely loved and I knew it. But that divorce, we moved away from what was familiar when I was in the third grade. And I mentioned that to you. I'm mentioning that to you for a very specific reason. We moved from, what was kind of the cocoon and what was familiar. And all of a sudden my parents are divorced. I'm living in Reseda, California, which if anybody's on the line from California, I don't know what Reseda is like today, but years and decades ago, it was a nice enough. However, it was like culture shock. And furthermore, my father stayed in Chicago. My father was a pharmacist when he was alive. He's been gone now for about 8 or 9 years. And he was gone, and it was devastating to me. I don't know how it was for my siblings. I know that I was just a very sensitive child. I cried a lot, constantly. I was devastated. I used to steal. This was the beginning of my stealing phase. I would steal his cologne so that I had something to smell to remind me of him. And that was the first things that I stole. I would much later steal other things like food and money and other things. But back then, that was the first thing that I stole from him, a bottle of cologne. And that would bring me a little bit of comfort in California. Part of the problem was that my mother remarried. I met my stepfather, me and my 3 siblings met my stepfather when we moved out there. He inherited 4 new children, as a stepfather. We didn't know at the time that he was physically and emotionally abusive. We later learned, I looked at you just on the fact that I was kind of targeted. I looked a lot like my father. As a psychologist, I wonder if that had something about it, but I also was very sensitive and I cried a lot, and that probably wasn't the easiest thing for him and my mother to do, because that was not part of their script. Their script was that we would live like a happy family. So, and I didn't feel that way. And so as a result of that, he was very abusive. I mentioned some of those things to you because none of those things, nor later when I was sexually molested as a child. And I mentioned the traumas, not to sensationalize them or not to minimize them for you, because you have your traumatic narrative in life and I have mine. I'm not minimizing the importance of those things. I mention that to you because none of those reasons are why I'm a compulsive overeater. They have nothing to do with that. And I'll prove it to you. There are people that have gone through horrible traumas in their life. Horrible, horrible traumas beyond which you can imagine. As a psychologist, I've met many of them. They have never once, many of them have had, in the midst of their traumas, their traumatic life, maybe they were loved, maybe they were abandoned, maybe they were rejected, maybe they were raped, molested, all sorts of horrific, horrific things. But many of them, they've never once had 2 or 3 Oreos cookies and decided, I'm going to have 50. Never occurred to them. Doesn't minimize their trauma, doesn't mean that it didn't impact their lives or created wounds and so forth, but it didn't make them into a compulsive overeater. No more so than someone on the line right now who knows that they qualify. They have the allergy and they have the obsession, and they had a beautiful, beautiful childhood. They were loved by their parents. They really didn't experience much in the way of trauma. They had maybe they were born kind of with a silver spoon to some extent, and they've never once been able to control the food. So we can work this on both ends, and yet I mention it because I think one of the challenges for me coming in is I came from with a perceptive lens that told me clearly my problem is food and weight. Certainly seemed that way. And furthermore, all the training that I've ever had, professional and otherwise, would suggest that if I just get down to the bottom of what's troubling me, if I just get down to the core things, then clearly I will be okay with the world. I will be more comfortable in my own skin. And here's the big transition, wait for it, and I won't ever compulsively overeat. And that's a lie. I know that experientially, that's a lie. And I needed to get rid of that myth because I would continue to pursue this program with limited enthusiasm, with an analytical mind that wanted to use the steps in a manner in which I can peel away the layers of the onion to get to the core of who I am. And somehow, if I could process those emotions, I won't eat until I'm sick. And that's not true. That's no more true than someone on the line or an individual you may know that has gastric bypass surgery. It is let's presume they are a compulsive overeater. They have the allergy, they have the mental twist, the obsession, have the double whammy. And they have the surgery, they begin to lose weight. Problem solved. They never have a craving again. The obsession never gets them again. Their problem solved. And you and I both know that's not true. I've yet to meet. If you're that person, call me and let me know, because I want to know that you are that person that is a compulsive overeater and that solved your problem. And that's why it's important for me to recognize that while my childhood traumas and things and the wounds that impacted me were important to process, were important to take a look at and examine, and they do get examined in the steps because there were resentments. My biggest resentment was towards my mother. Why? Because she didn't protect me. Now, you would love my mother. I know it. No, you would. She's in her 80s. She's this warm, kind, sharp woman. She exudes warmth. The grandchildren and great grandchildren, my family, absolutely have an extraordinary relationship with my mom. Now, they don't know the woman that I knew in her 20s, but who is the same when they were in their 20s and 30s and early 40s? She was addicted to amphetamines, diet drugs. Remember those? And then for the men and women that could, you know, I was born in the 60s. I hate to age myself here, but I was around, you know, when that was prescribed. And my dad was a pharmacist. Are you kidding me? She had a willing dealer there, right? So, and it was well accepted. And so while we had the cleanest home on the block, because boy, did that woman have energy, she also could be extraordinarily go from loving and warm and kind to downright frightening and unpredictable. And you had to tiptoe around my mother like there were eggshells around her. You had to be very, very careful. Well, she's not that person anymore. But that resentment that she didn't protect me was there. And so one of the reasons I was having a conversation recently with someone that said, you know, I've worked this. I really have, Larry. I've tried and I just hasn't, the obsession has not left me. I will tell you that. And, you know, and I said, well, I can only speak to my experience. I wasn't willing to let go of that resentment toward my mother. Now, if you would have asked me in the midst of my very first fourth step and later fifth, sixth, seventh, and when I'm in the ninth step, I would have said, I absolutely want that resentment gone. Are you kidding me? But the truth was what I really wanted. I know this today. I did not know this then. I wanted to, yes, there were some harms that I detached emotionally. I put her through the paces over decades and so forth. There were harms that I wanted to bring to light. But you know what I really wanted? Once I was done making those amends, I wanted a sincere apology from her. Now, guess who's the judge on what sincerity is? Me. I'm the judge of what sincerity is. And if I don't get that, sorry, I'm hanging on to that resentment. And it was corroding me like a cancer from the inside. So when you hear about the impediments, I'll call it the impediments, the barriers to recovery, a resentment we won't let go of. We may think we're getting, I thought I was doing what the big book asked me to do and what my sponsor asked me to do. I did a 4-step inventory, got the resentment, looked at my side of the street, right? I later navigated through 5, 6, 7. I got to 9. I went before my mother. I made amends, you know, looking at my side. But the truth was my heart was waiting for her to sincerely apologize. I wanted tears. I wanted sincerity. And because I wanted her, my script was that would be healing to me if she kind of fell to her knees and in just anguish apologized. And I was never going to get that. So that was a resentment I would not let go of. And when I was talking to this person too, were there secrets I was holding on to? You betcha. I'll share most of it, but see, I shared a little bit with Maria, and I'm just using this facetiously, right? And a little bit with Nancy that I thought would be palatable to Nancy, and then a little bit over here with Nikki. And no one person ever got the entire picture of my secrets. And there were some secrets that I thought I would take to my grave. And so thus, as a result of that, there were secrets I was unwilling to tell. And that kept me blocked off from having a deeper, more profound alignment with a higher power, because isn't this about a heart change? Isn't this about a revolutionary change of heart and mind? Or is this just about doing just enough, get a little bit of relief so that maybe the food gets a little bit more quiet than it used to be? Is that what this is? That's not sustainable. See, to be an effective recovery, it has to be sustainable in good times and bad. It has to be sustainable. So for me, and I just speak for me, not for you or for anyone in OA, there were secrets I wouldn't tell, resentments I wouldn't let go of. And you know what I got a vicarious thrill from? and I know I'm the only one on the line, so, but I'm willing to be transparent. I like to manipulate. I like to control people, and I like to control situations. Do it with sugar, do it with charm, you know, and that was a vicarious, I would get a vicarious thrill from that. And God either is or God isn't. And if God is this mysterious higher power that I cannot fully understand, and if I continue to try to live where my heart is, you know, is basically, you know, I'm always focused on what that selfish, self-centered types of behavior. Now, I know there's no one on the line that's perfect, nor do we need to be saint. Big Book's quite clear about that. But the reality was is that I wasn't, I was getting a thrill from those things, and some of the dishonesty when it served me, the white lies, stealing time from my employer, stealing time from my loved ones, stealing money from them in the sense from my daughter. I'll give you how I did that. Didn't go and, you know, smash open her piggy bank. But I spent money on other things that I knew really I had this child. I needed to be responsible for this child and for my family. And I was using money for other things. In my way of thinking, that was stealing. Now you may see it a different way, but I've come, God has awakened me. We talk about a spiritual awakening. It's not all that complex, and really, it's not an algebraic equation or calculus. I'm just over time, in the midst of implementing these steps, I get insights. I become awakened to different things. That's the awakening for me, oftentimes. So I became awakened to some of those things, and I had to, if I was entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, then I would have to begin to start doing the opposite of those things. Being honest, even when, you know, Anne Marie from Pennsylvania isn't looking. You know what I mean? Like just be honest when she's not even looking. You know, just be honest when, like Harlan has told me, and he says, gosh, I hate to quote Harlan because, you know, man needs a bigger head, like, you know what, but anyway, and you know, I love this man, but he said, Larry, and someone told him this because he steals everything from other people. We were encouraged to steal in this program, right? And apply these things. So he said, if everything you did today was splashed as a headline in the Chicago Tribune, would you be okay with that? Would you be okay with that? And I began to ask myself that question. And many times the answer was no, I really wouldn't be okay with that. You know, I wouldn't be okay with it. Try to live my life a little bit more aligned. No one of us is perfectly congruent as a human being, right? But I try to live in greater alignment. You know, you ever heard the teacup metaphor? See, I want to be the teacup. See, I want to be that flawless teacup that I see in the rooms. I want to look the way you do, and I want to, you know, I want to be able to communicate the joy and the happiness and all the different things the way you are. I want to be that flawless teacup. Now, I don't want to put the work in to get that. I just want to hang around you long enough that maybe I can get some of your mojo, right? So I don't want to do the work. So here's the thing, the moral of the teacup story is that God knows what God is doing for each one of us. You know, I believe that. God knows what doesn't need my help. You know, and so, you know, he's the potter. He's molding the clay, right? And he knows what he's doing, and I'm God's clay, and I'm to be molded, and he's going to expose me to just enough of the life pressures and different things in just the right amount so that I can recover in the timing, the perfect timing for him. And it may not be the same timing as someone else. It may take me a lot longer, but it takes what it takes. You know, so if you've been here, my first 5 years, how am I doing on time? Maria, are you timing? Or
Yeah,
someone else?
Larry, you've got 10 minutes left.
Oh my God, 10 more minutes of me. That's crazy. All right. So Where was I? I forgot. That's what happens at 57. You just start forgetting things. But anyway, but I wanted to be this, back to this, I wanted to be this shiny, beautiful little teacup without the molding and the time that it would take and the effort and the actions that I must take. I wanted to feel better now. Now, once I feel better, then I'll get the food in order. Of course I will. And so I think that was kind of the approach. I had 9 sponsors in the first 5 years in Overeaters Anonymous. And when I got to this recovered state of being, I can't tell you that it was the 9th sponsor. That was the guy with the goods. That was the guy with the recovery, and he could turn a phrase and he could bring the words off the page. No, that guy's back in the food, as far as I know. And I mentioned that to you, not, just to let you know that, it's not, I think what happened is the pain of continuing to eat became greater than the pain of putting it down. The pain of continuing to eat became greater than the pain of putting it down, because the pain of putting it down, there's pain in putting food down. Is there not? There's physical pain. How about emotional pain? Perhaps one could say spiritual pain, but there is pain when we put the food down in an unrecovered state. And so I think that was the threshold for me, is looking back. I don't think you gave me a coin for that day. And I acknowledge, like, let's clap for Larry. He finally, the pain of continuing to eat became greater than the pain of putting it down. And so now he's going to be on his way, and he's going to implement these steps in sequence. He's going to follow these instructions, not perfectly, but precisely. He's going to follow them precisely. And he's going to take guidance with humility. No coin for that. And I couldn't tell you the day that happened, but it did happen. And so the food did its job. Say that, John Barleycorn, candy corn is our great persuader. That's gonna, it's not, the person that can turn the phrase. Now, do we need people? You bet. We need people that can bring these words off the pages and bring them to life for us, so that we can see how these words and these instructions get integrated together, so that they can become a part of who I am. Not something that I study in my spare time, sort of like a hobby. You know what a hobby is for me? Scrabble. I like Scrabble. That's a good hobby. I like to read a little bit. That's a hobby. I like to watch, maybe you like to watch shows. Things that I do in my spare time. This is who I am. This book, sometimes we give too much, the book, you keep talking, enough about the book. But here's the reality for me. It's where do the words lead me to? Where do they lead me? For example, when I read in the doctor's opinion, not even the other, the first part is this: in our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out the physical factor is incomplete. If you leave out the allergy, it's incomplete. Because, you leave out the allergy. When I take in any of my heroin, I'm using that specifically, my heroin food substance into my system. Now, it's not going to kill me as quick as fentanyl or as OxyContin, or any of those things. But it will kill me spiritually, and then it'll eventually physically kill me. But it's not going to kill me as quick, but the reality is there's something about, maybe genetically, what have you, that I'll give you, and I'll describe it, see if you can relate. When I would just order the pizza, I would get an anticipatory excitement that would physically affect. I bet you if you looked at my pupils, they were dilating. I bet if you looked at my heart rate, all that, there was an excitement. I bet if you could measure, my brain waves, and I bet there was a shot of, different neurotransmitters that were exciting. There was an excitability. Just ordering the pizza, it affected me physically. Now, eating it was pretty good too, but I got it, and that's not normal. So when people talk about just ingesting a physical substance, see, in the same way that it gave me an anticipatory excitement and high, so too to the person on the line who gets this. Now, if you're not this person, you won't understand. You don't need to. But gets an anticipatory excitement and high over vomiting. Now, who does that? Restricting, exercising, shopping, gambling. These are not ingested substances, but it affects us physiologically first. And we will continue. And when we take that behavior into our system, we want more of the same. And if we stop doing it, even if we have a spiritual transformation of some type, if we don't continue on this pathway and we get complacent, the obsession will come back. And someday you'll have a broken shoelace. Doesn't have to be a major trauma. You'll have a nothing, a big nothing, and it'll be a sunny, beautiful day, and you'll say, I think this is a good day to restrict, or a good day to get, or a good day to pick up the behavior or the substance. And so I have to look at the physical allergy. The physical allergy means that once I start that, I cannot stop. And it's a little bit like Russian roulette. It's unpredictable. Maybe sometimes I could stop, but it's just not consistent. It's unpredictable. I never know which way it's going to go. And then once I stop for a period of time, I can't stop from starting again due to the obsession. Well, guess what the steps treat? These steps, this practical program of spiritual action, treat the obsession, not the allergy. And when the obsession is driven out, and we learn a spiritual skill set and maintain that over time, and it becomes who you are, a part of you, it gets easier over time, and we don't become complacent. And we do this, and the food remains quiet, and that obsession is lifted one day at a time. We're not cured, but it is absolutely eradicated. And as long as we stay on that beam of recovery through the implementation of these steps, it stays quiet for a lifetime. We will all die on this line. Newsflash, right? But I am not going to give one more second to this disease. I am not going to die of this disease by the grace of my higher power. So I don't know, Maria, are we getting pretty, it's probably a good place to almost stop there.
3 minutes left, but if you want to stop here.
Oh, I'm going to use it. I'm just going to use it all up. No, I'll just share with you today. Today, life is so much better. People can count on me today, not perfectly, but they can count on me today. I'm predictable in a good way. My daughter doesn't remember the man who came into, she's 27. She doesn't remember the guy that used to steal her Halloween candy, that used to, have fits of rage, not physical rage, but it was just as bad. She doesn't know that man. How did that happen? How did that happen if not God and the implementation and my cooperation? I had to cooperate with the step, cooperation rather than defiance. And I still have to do this. I'm a very, strong-willed person. I really want to define rather than cooperate, that level of surrender. So anyways, I think that's enough out of me. So nice to see everyone. And with that, I pass. Thanks, Maria.
Thanks.